Well, it wouldn't be a Formula One talk if we didn't have a little technical cock up at the beginning, so that's fine.
Yeah, I can hear you perfect now.
Good, 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 good. Thanks for your time and thanks for inviting me to join you guys.
Lovely. Thanks. I appreciate for coming now. So, and especially for everyone coming tonight now. It's a lovely evening here in Ireland. So I'd say
Yeah,
people
well,
should be up to the outside.
it's much the same over here in England. It's been a very rare week of sunshine, so yeah, nice to have the chance to spend some time with you all. And yeah, very keen to crack on and take any questions, talk about whatever.
So, Mark, just want to tell us about the start of your career in Formula One and how you kind of got into it.
Yeah, I think there's someone with a bit of noise in the background on their microphone, so if we can mute microphones, that would be good. So, in terms of my background, well, as you can tell from the accent, I'm a northerner. I grew up in Belfast, went to Queen's University, didn't do engineering, did my degree in business management and economics, and was then very fortunate to go from university straight into working in racing. But a little bit of a fluke. I was actually going to be an accountant, but when I came to London to be interviewed, I saw a job advertisement for Autosport magazine, which at the time was the go-to publication for motor racing. And I applied for that job and I got it. And my parents were extremely disappointed. Um, but that was the beginning of my career in racing. So I worked, so in short, I worked in the media for 7 years in Formula One and Junior Formula. And then um, had met a fellow Irishman by the name of Eddie Jordan. Of course, recently lost to us, which is a very sad turn of events. And Eddie and I got to know each other well. He told me he was going to do Formula One, and I joined him in the run up to that. So I was freelancing by that stage. So I worked for Eddie as a contractor, and we launched the Formula One team in 1990, and then our first season was 1991. And I was with Jordan, not all the way through. I left for a little bit in the middle. We could talk about that if you want to, because I ended up doing a year in the World Rally Championship, which was spectacularly good fun. But I came back to Formula One with Eddie, and I was with Jordan really for pretty well 15 years of my career. I was on the management board. I was responsible for the commercial side, marketing, communications, hospitality, PR, sponsorship negotiations. Not so much the driver negotiations. That was something that Eddie did. Then I went from Jordan to um, Red Bull Racing, but actually it was Jaguar when I joined it, and my job was to help Ford to sell the team. And we sold the team to Red Bull, and then I worked with Red Bull both in the team on the setting up the commercial operation, and then in a non-executive role. And when I left, so Red Bull moved the commercial operations to Austria. I used that opportunity to set up my own racing team called Status Grand Prix, and we did the A1 Grand Prix, World Cup of Motorsport, which some of you may have heard of. But that was each team represented a country. We had the franchise for Ireland. We won that championship in 2009. And then we went into GP3 and GP2, which of course today is Formula 3 and Formula 2. We also did the Le Mans 24 Hours 4 times, competed in the World Endurance Championship. And then from a personal point of view, I was headhunted actually to bring Cosworth back into Formula One as an engine company, and it was too good an opportunity. So I dived into that and spent just over 2 years bringing Cosworth back into Formula One, servicing all the teams that we worked with. Really a very much a challenging job, but a fun experience. And then I set up my own company. So for the last 13 years, I've had my own company, Performance Insights. We do corporate work, sponsorship work, um, management, representation, some talent management, and we work with a portfolio of about 35 people, all of whom are in F1. So former drivers that you may have heard of, Mika Hakkinen, David Coulthard. Last year we worked with Nico Rosberg and Seb Vettel on a few things. We also represent a number of engineers, worked with some team principals, um, represent Gunther Steiner, who you may have heard of. That's what I do. So it's very much using my experience of running the commercial side of a Formula One team to run the commercial activities for people within the Formula One community. So there you go. That's me.
And just for your Performance Insights company, through your experience in Formula One, how would you say you applied your experience to make that company a success?
Um, the thing about Formula One is that it's all about, from a commercial point of view, it's about understanding the the commercial rights that you own. So when you're a team, you're selling commercial sponsorship of the team, or you're selling merchandise, or you're selling intellectual property in relation to the team. And it's very much the same in terms of talent management. So if you take someone we work with like Claire Williams. So Claire Williams was a team principal. Her family, of course, founded and owned the Williams Formula One team. And when Claire sold the team, she was a little bit at a loss as to know what to do next. So we've brought our commercial expertise to Claire, opened the door for her to start a new career, speaking to businesses around the world about what you can learn from Formula One. She's also become a brand ambassador for Santander. She's also a brand ambassador for Fortescue, which is a big mining company, and they actually acquired the Williams Advanced Engineering business. So there's a good example of an individual who used to be part of a huge Formula One team. She's now on her own, and my team of people provide her with all the support necessary for her to continue her career. And similarly for a Formula One driver, when they come out of Formula One, they will have spent maybe 5, 10, 15 years surrounded by a whole team of people helping them. And suddenly when they retire from the Formula One cockpit, they do literally find themselves sitting at home on their own with no one around them. Very often, sports management companies do not support athletes after they retire from the sport, and that's kind of where we step in. I like to think we essentially have the know-how to enable people, whether they are currently involved in Formula One or whether they have just come out of the sport, to build and sustain their career. And it's something I really really enjoy. And of course, from a technical point of view, which I'm sure you'll all be interested in, um, when you get involved in working with people like um, Adrian Newey or Otmar Safnauer, who was team principal at Alpine, or we have a number of data scientists who work for us. So if you think about um, the fact that 1 in 6 sponsors in Formula One today come from essentially the information technology sector. So be that hardware, software, cloud services, cybersecurity, AI, whole range of disciplines. But so data science has become such a really important part of the fabric of Formula One as an industry. And we represent a bunch of data scientists, and it means that we can bring them into all kinds of projects and all kinds of opportunities. And don't think they would mind me saying that, because they are scientists, and some of them might even say they are super nerds. I mean, they're really really bright people. They love the fact that we bring a commercial dimension to what they do, and we can help them to sustain their careers.
Lovely. Anyone else have any questions for Mark if you want to jump on? Any killer questions?
Yeah, very happy to take any questions.
Or
Um,
while they're thinking, I might have another one if someone
yeah.
is still thinking. So,
Oh, there's Killian.
uh, hi, how are you?
Yeah, good.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, just from an engineer's, say a student's engineer's point of view, um, what would you look for in like how would you get into Formula One from an student engineer's point of view?
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks for the question. The good news is it's not necessarily easier to get into Formula One today, but there are more opportunities today than there ever have been because the sport is in rude health, and we have 10 very large teams today. Even the small team like Haas is becoming bigger. We have an 11th team, of course, joining for next season. One of the people we work with, Peter Krola, yesterday was appointed team manager of the Cadillac team that's coming into Formula One. So if you do the math, there are 10 teams, soon to be 11. Not everyone has over 1,000 employees, but if you add it all up, there are about 14,500 full-time jobs across the Formula One teams. Then you have the supply chain, which is a really important point, which I'll come on to. So you have a lot of suppliers who we work with, companies like Magneti Marelli. I think I'm right in saying every single engine manufacturer in Formula One works with Magneti Marelli in some shape or form. You either have their injector system or you have their alternators at Cosworth. I remember bringing Magneti Marelli into as a key supplier. So you have not just the Formula One teams, but you have the supplier base, and it's quite important to remember that although you will see Formula One teams in the pit lane with their uniforms on, a percentage of those team members are actually suppliers, so they're contractors, and so that broadens your opportunity. So it's not just the 10 or 11 teams; it's all the suppliers within the industry as well. So there's lots of companies that they're always recruiting. I spoke to Red Bull's HR director a while ago, and she said to me that on a typical week they lose two people, so they are replacing over 100 people a year in the team, and they lose two people a week for all the usual reasons. They have they've gone to another team. They perhaps have decided to get another job outside of the industry, or they've decided to work in another area of motorsport, or they don't want to travel anymore. If they're in the traveling race team, they maybe have a partner, might have children, they might want to travel anymore. So there's a turnover of staff, and that's the same whether it's Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston Martin. So it's really important to ensure that the HR departments are aware of you, that when they have a vacancy that they will consider you for that. So that's a really quite an important point. One thing that I notice is a lot of people will say to me, well, there's no jobs available at the moment. Well, that might be true today, but is your CV sitting in the filing cabinet of all the Formula One teams? Do they know that you exist? Because when an opportunity arises, it's then important that they know that you're available and interested. So that's kind of important. And the other thing, really, Killian, that I would say to you, and this is much harder for me to articulate because there's no one answer to it, but to get to Formula One very often requires a circuitous route. So it's not a straight line. I mean, I chose initially, even in the media, I realized, to become a Formula One media person would be hard. So I purposely decided to target working in lower formula. And I'm not pleading um, kind of hard times or poverty or anything like that. But I mean, I did definitely do my hard yards in the first 3 years of my career by going to Formula Ford races and Formula 3 races and Formula 2 races. And just enjoying working in racing, even though it wasn't Formula One. But what that does do is it builds your knowledge, your expertise. You get to know people, you build a network, and as an engineer, it's so important to get experience. I don't care how you do it. Find a race team, help them at the weekend. Find someone down the road who's got a race car, help them with it. Volunteer. If necessary, you work for nothing on a summer holiday or on a weekend, and or maybe you do a job. Maybe you take on a technical job that's not necessarily the one you really want to do, but you use that job to get a foot in the door and build your network. And it is remarkable how just by getting in, you build those networks. And so that's certainly what I found. And I can give you 101 examples of people that I have employed or have come to work with me who are today in very senior roles in Formula One. They got there by looking at the opportunities that exist at a particular time and taking advantage of that. And final thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up, is there is a stereotype of the engineer, which is someone who's incredibly skilled and knowledgeable and academically qualified, but perhaps not as strong with the softer skills, and that's a really important thing. So you need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to sell yourself. You needn't be shy or retiring about promoting yourself. Get out there, use all the available tools. I mean, it's amazing who you can connect with on LinkedIn, build up a relationship with people. Just promote yourself. And as I say, I know I've when I was running Cosworth, I had 300 engineers working for me. So few of them were really had what I would call leadership material. They were quite happy to sit in front of a workstation, do their job as engineers, which is great. But of course, if you want to progress, you've got to build your networks. You've got to sell yourself. You've got to promote yourself. So do think about that aspect as well, because no one will push you more than yourself. No one will sell you better than yourself. So don't be shy at coming forward and put yourself out there.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mark. Anybody else have any questions like that, Mark?
Jesus, you work with some very shy people.
They're just too shy, Mark.
Here's Colin. Here's Colin.
Oh, I knew this was coming now. I knew this was coming.
I'm outside for a bit of a walk at the moment, so I don't know if the microphone's picking up everything. I hope
we can hear you. We can hear you.
You can hear me. All right,
Yeah.
perfect. Would you just be able to talk me through your sponsorship strategy for Jordan, or just a few tips on it, if you could?
Yeah, sure. I mean, gosh, it was funny. Working with Eddie Jordan was an interesting experience because he was a salesman par excellence. And our strategy for sponsorship at Jordan was to really have a campaign. And by that, I mean, make a list of people who we were going to go after for sponsorship. And that wasn't just any old list. We didn't just dream it up. We would do our research. Who are the companies that we think should be interested or are interested? So that might be a combination of existing sponsors of other people. It might be sponsors of other sports or sponsors of other motorsport activities. So you'd make a list of people that you would feel ought to be interested in what you want to offer them, and then of course you pursue those opportunities. And of course, the thing I can tell you is that you can, once you establish contact with a potential sponsor or a company you want to talk to, you can. The most important thing is to qualify whether they're interested or not. One of the things I learned from Eddie is that quite often when you get involved in sponsorship discussions, people are really happy to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. You have to close the deal. At some point you have to say, look, is this something that would you actually spend the money? Or are you prepared to do it? So not only have we done the research on the clients and the hit list, but then when we get into talking with them, we sort of establish fairly early on that they have the appetite, not just the interest, but the financial wherewithal to do what we were doing. There was a couple of other things, Colin, that we did at Jordan, which served us very well. Particularly, well, I was going to say particularly in the early years, but actually I would say this was the whole way through. We were up against the big teams, up against McLaren, Williams, Benetton, Ferrari. So how does a startup Irish Formula One team sell? How do you sell against the big teams? Well, one of the things that we did was to basically set out what made us different. Our Irishness was one thing, and it's something I've talked about a few times in recent years. But being an Irish team, we decided we would be very welcoming. We would be nice people to deal with. We would be a fun team. So whether we were winning or losing, having a good weekend or a bad weekend on track, our sponsors always had a great time. And that's a really important point about customers. So sponsors are customers. And the thing is, you want a customer to enjoy the experience of working with you, whatever happens. And we really focused on that quite a lot, because teams like McLaren and Williams, they were principally selling their ability to win races and championships, which is fine. But the problem is, even the best team doesn't win all the time. So if your positioning is purely, we're going to win everything, well, you're going to be disappointed a heck of a lot of the time. And we knew at Jordan that we weren't going to be dominating anytime soon. So we basically went to sponsors and said, look, tell us what you want from a Formula One program. We will then deliver that. If you want to win every race, please go and sponsor McLaren. But by the way, you need to spend 50 or 60 million. Whereas if you want to spend 1 or 2 million, you can do it with us. We will be a challenger. You'll have great fun doing it. We will work really hard with you Monday to Friday to deliver the program that you want. So, it could be public relations, it could be advertising, it could be all kinds of marketing programs, product launches, trade shows, exhibitions, whatever it is that you basically need to do as a business to leverage your involvement with Formula One. And that just worked brilliantly. And, I realize it's a long time ago now, especially for you folks on the call. But by the time Jordan became a winning team, we had the most impressive list of sponsors. And I always say one of my favorite moments was when Ron Dennis, who was the chief executive of McLaren, gave an interview in which he said that he couldn't understand why Jordan had so many sponsors, because he said, they basically haven't done anything, but they've got all these sponsors. And I remember Eddie and I laughing at that and saying, well, Ron's kind of missed the point. The point is that we deliver for our sponsors 52 weeks of the year. We don't just rely on the result at 4:00 on a Sunday afternoon, and that's what built us our very strong sponsor portfolio. And that's what you do. You go out and you sell the benefit to the business, and not many people are great at it. But you only have to look at someone like Zach Brown. Zach is, he has turned McLaren around partly because of his ability to build their portfolio of sponsors into the best in the business. And it's all about making sure you deliver something of value for the sponsor other than just the racing on a Sunday.
Now, Colin, you've no
Perfect.
excuse.
Thanks very much, Mark. Very insightful.
Thanks, Colin.
Would you just a quick add-on? Would you have any tips for us as a smaller scale operation in going towards sponsors?
Yeah,
even a few tips on how to close, if possible.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it doesn't matter whether you're trying to raise 100 euros, 100,000 euros, or 10 million euros. The principle is the same. You're looking at. It's really important to think about what's in it for them. Okay. Now, what's in it for you is obvious. Okay. What's in it for you is obvious. It's what's in it for them. So, with Formula student programs and Formula One in schools programs that I've got involved in before, I've always said, right, so let's start with what I call the low hanging fruit. Terrible expression, but it is there. So, who in the team has got a mum or dad who runs a very successful business? We'll go and pitch them. Um, and um, and you'll say, well, so what's in it for the family? Well, what's in it for that family business is the opportunity to be seen to support students and really worthwhile activities. And there is a benefit to that. And of course, let's be clear, when a company spends money on sponsorship and marketing, that is a tax deductible expense. So you start looking at who do we know in our family connections, our friends, who owns businesses locally, what are the local businesses that we already see spending money. Who is sponsoring the local football team, or who is. So you again, you're going in and you're making that list of targets, but you have to look at each one in terms of what's in it for them. And putting branding and logos on things, that's fine, but actually that doesn't really do it for most people. The kind of thing that does it for people is, the creating publicity. That could be PR, could be PR online, could be PR in traditional media. It could be creating events that they get to come to. Maybe they bring their customers, or maybe you go to their customer events. So, for example, I did a program with the Formula One in schools team in Dubai, and one of the things that we did there was we actually found we got a local sponsor, a small company, but it turned out that they had a trade show every year. So they had like a 1 week trade show that they used to go to, and they never knew what to put on their trade show stand. They had quite a boring business. So we made their business exciting because we actually worked with them to create a Formula One in schools display on their trade show stand. And it increased the number of people who came on their stand, and people were like, "Oh, we didn't know you were involved in this. It's really interesting. And what are you doing?" And so you're again, it's about integrating what you're doing with what that company is doing, so that the person writing the check or sending the money is seeing value in it. It's not about patronage. If you find a patron, that's great. So a patron's obviously someone who just likes the color of your eyes and gives you the money and says, "Have a great time." And now and again you do find patrons along the way. But in terms of sponsorship, you need an exchange of value. You need their money and their support, or their money and their technical expertise if you've got a technical sponsor. But what are you giving back to them? And the only easiest way to find out what will benefit them is to ask them, to sit down and say, look, what could we do that would really float your boat for you and make you feel good, about your business, and for your employees, for your customers. And people will fairly quickly tell you, it would be great if we did XYZ, and then you try and help them to achieve that.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Mark. Really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure, Colin.
See,
Thank you.
Clara has a question. I'll just unmute her there
Yeah. Hi, Clara.
if she still has the question. Yep, there we go. If anyone else has a question in the meantime, while Clara's sorting that out.
Yeah.
I have a question myself. So, when
Yeah.
you're starting off in your Formula One journey,
Yeah.
like a lot of us want to do, uh, when you're starting off, what was kind of the biggest obstacle you faced when you're entering into your career, and what would you have done different if you had to go back?
I would say that for me, I didn't really fully appreciate at the beginning just how important it is to build a network. And I did it naturally. I did it because I was working in the media. I got to know a lot of people very quickly, and that was quite helpful for me. And that might be less the case for an engineer coming into the sport. So when I was in the media, I had a media pass, so I could go around and talk to people. I commentated on Motorsport for a number of broadcast channels, Eurosport, which is no longer with us, but Eurosport got me to come in and do a few years of commentary work with them. So working in the media, I got to know a lot of people. Going back, what I would do differently is I would really focus on building some key relationships. I mean, even Eddie, well, the very first time I met Eddie, I was 14 and he was a racing driver in Ireland. But the first time I met Eddie professionally, um, I was already sort of 23, 24 years of age. And I was a little bit not sure of what he was going to be doing. And I didn't really appreciate how valuable that connection would be. And to begin with, I didn't make enough of it. But then we persevered, and a few years later, suddenly he's in Formula One, and I'm running the press and PR, and then the marketing and the sponsorship. But had I jumped into that relationship more fully at the beginning, I could have had a faster route into working in a team, and I would have worked with Eddie much sooner. So I think going back, I was a little bit too reticent about doing what was necessary to build relationships. And you've got to do that. You've really got to drill into that. You get an opportunity, you meet people, you build relationships, and as I said, you sell yourself. So I think that's a little bit what I would do differently. I have to tell you all, there's a huge advantage to being Irish, because we are naturally friendly people. And I remember one day in Formula One, there was a newspaper. I think it was the Independent, not the Indo in Ireland, but the Independent in London. They decided to do a feature on how many Irish people worked in Formula One, and we were expecting about 10 people to turn up, and I think there were 40 of us, and we were all standing around going, "Oh my God! Like, what is it about the Irish? I mean, we're everywhere, and we are. And the thing is that actually is quite useful. So you take someone like Bob Bell, who is I forget his title at Aston Martin. Aston Martin has more technical chiefs that you could shake a stick at, but he's got a very senior technical role at Aston Martin. And Bob went to Queen's University, and is an extremely influential guy within the industry. And you've got, lots of other people who've come through the ranks. And we not only have, the sort of Irish contingent in Formula One, but we have what we call honorary Irishmen, like Bono, Peter Bonington, who is, famously is Lewis's engineer. But, Bono worked at Jordan, and, anybody who came through the Jordan doors ended up basically as an honorary Irishman. So we use that, and Eddie used it a great deal, and it became so that sort of ability to connect with people, have a bit of crack, chat to people, build relationships is actually a really important quality. And if you get that opportunity to kick a door open, get into a business, get an internship, get a temporary opportunity, work in a supplier. If you're going to work for a supplier and then you end up getting to spend some time with the Formula One team, there's your opportunity to build a relationship. So I think going back for me, I would have worked a bit more cleverly and harder with my network in the early stages of my career, and not been as shy as I was at the time. It took me a while to get to where I wanted to get to.
Lovely, thanks for that. I see Killian has another question there.
Did Clara disappear?
I don't know where she's gone. I'd say she got a bit
I
scared.
think.
Clara.
There we go. About do you know about apprenticeship opportunities around, like, any opportunities like that, or like work experiences?
Yes. So yeah, thanks for that. So Apprenticeships are very popular amongst the Formula One teams because it's the teams would generally prefer to train people in the way they want them to be trained. Because if you take an apprentice on, you get the opportunity to show them how you want them to work, and that's one reason apprenticeships are very popular, particularly in terms of training mechanics and things like that. But also engineers. Apprenticeships from an engineering. So for engineers, it's a little bit more formal. So if you take teams like Mercedes-Benz and Brackley or Red Bull Racing and Milton Keynes, they take on engineering undergraduates for internships and work experience. They advertise that every year. But I'm going to come back, Clara, to something I said earlier on. Do not wait for someone to advertise, because because the problem is the moment they advertise, they get 10,000 applications. Okay, now 9,000 of those applications come from fans who, it's just wasting the time of the team. But you're still ending up with 1,000 good applications from all over the world. And one of the problems of Formula One today is because of the Netflix effect. The teams are inundated with people looking for jobs. So you've got to stand out from the crowd. And this is why I think, writing a well-written letter, like not an email, the inbox of HR departments is absolutely, they're full to bursting. Drop a nice letter and a CV to the HR director, outlining your interest, saying, if you have an opportunity or an internship program or work placement, or even just a visit to the factory, even just, if you have a weekend where you have an open day, I'd like to come. You've got to put yourself out there. And the teams do bring interns through. Her name's gone out of my head, my God. But anyway, I did an interview with a woman who is, she's actually a powertrain engineer at Mercedes-Benz. I'm really sorry, her name escapes me. But anyway, and her story was that as a 19-year-old undergraduate, she got into Formula One as a sport. She started getting interested in it through her stepfather. And when she was 21, she got an internship for a year at Mercedes-Benz, and she really enjoyed it. Just couldn't believe she was working at Mercedes-Benz as an intern. She finished her degree. I think she did a master's. Can't remember. But anyway, she finished her academia, and Mercedes took her straight back. They said they just really liked her. And so at the age of 24, she's working full-time for Mercedes-Benz. 5 years later, she's head of powertrain systems on, I think it was Valtteri Bottas's car to begin with. And that's when I met her and we had a bit of a chat about it. And she said to me, Mark, like, I just can't believe what's happened over the last 10 years. And in fact, when they won a Grand Prix, one of Valtteri's races, they asked her to represent the team on the podium. And I remember her saying to me, like, 10 years after my stepdad and I were watching Grand Prix on TV, I'm on the podium standing between Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. And it does show what can happen. But the trigger for that was her going after all the internships and writing to the teams. And then when she got that internship, she did such a good job and built such a good relationship with the relevant people that when she qualified, it was automatic. They were always going to take her on. And that's a particularly good experience that she's had. That's a pretty direct route into Formula One, but it goes to show that it is possible. And that's a good way to go about it. Thanks for your question, Clara.
Killian, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just thought of another one there. Sorry,
That's all right.
while you're talking. I suppose firstly, is there a specific universities that F1 teams go towards in terms of hiring, or is it pretty vague?
No, there really isn't. I've mentioned my own university, Queen's. I mean, there are great universities all over Ireland which have got very strong engineering departments, and as I say, there's no, I mean, there's nobody in Formula One teams in England viewing Irish engineers as anything other than entirely valuable members of staff to bring on board. In in the UK, you have some universities that, for a few reasons, have stood out from the crowd. Imperial College, UCL, Southampton, um, Glasgow University, interestingly. Some of the, obviously, I'm going to say Cambridge. Cambridge has featured a few times. So if you look at the so, for example, the principal strategist at Red Bull Racing, she came through as a graduate, a data scientist, basically graduating from Cambridge University into Red Bull Racing, initially working in data analysis, and she's now head of strategy there. And in terms of postgraduate, there is a little bit of a aura, a little bit of a halo around Cranfield University, because they have a particularly strong racing heritage in terms of vehicle dynamics, but also aerodynamics. Aerodynamics being a particularly important discipline, of course, for Formula One. So, and for example, my son Frank, he did his degree in mechanical engineering at Oxford Brookes, but then he went to Cranfield. At which point he decided not to do Formula One, so he changed direction and he went to Cranfield and did astronautics instead of aerodynamics. But he did astronautics, and that's taken him off into working in the space industry. So Cranfield has a very strong reputation, and someone like Adrian Newey, if he sees you've got Cranfield on there, he'll be slightly more biased towards you.
That's why I asked. I didn't know you went to Queens actually. There's a girl that works for Aston Martin. Her name is Sosnia Nidoon.
Oh
She's
yeah,
from
yeah,
she's from where I'm from, so
yeah, yeah.
Black and Kerry. So yeah, she went to Queens. I just said I mentioned.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly. And I've actually seen her, and I've never met her. One of the things I regret is that you know you go through a team like Jordan for 15 years, and then Jordan has now become Aston Martin, and I see all of these two young talented people there, but of course our paths have never crossed. We've never worked together in the team, and the industry has grown. And one of the things that I want to sort of say so who have we got on here? So we got Clara and Chloe. I don't know if TJ is a man or a woman, but anyway, but all I will say to Clara and Chloe is stick at it, because it is a long time ago that we all decided in Formula One that we don't have enough female engineers. We're going back 20 years ago. And the reason for that is that I would love to tell you it was because we all woke up one morning and said, we need greater gender diversity. Actually, we all woke up one morning and decided we need more engineers. And half the planet was not becoming engineers. Just women were not in engineering. Our drawing office used to be just a wasteland in terms. There was just no women working in engineering at Jordan. So that's why programs like Formula Student and Formula One in schools became really important. And what's really interesting is the change that has taken place. And you have a lot more female engineers working in the sport than ever before. And that number is increasing all the time. Teams like Mercedes-Benz have got really big programs. Mercedes-Benz so this year, it's the culmination of, I think it's been a 6-year program, which is that by 2025, 25% of all new recruits into Mercedes-Benz come from underrepresented backgrounds, whether from a gender or a cultural perspective. And that's led to quite a big change in the makeup of the team. So it's very much the case that Formula One as an industry has done a lot of growing up over the year, and it's no longer it's no longer a boys' club. It's no longer a misogynistic, nightmare to work in. And so please do, pursue what you want to do if you want to work in the industry, because you will find a lot of doors, willingly open for you.
Thanks. So I have one or two more questions now for Mark. I see Jack has his hand up there. I'll unmute.
Okay. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Marco. Things. I
Good.
just have a kind of a question about like leadership strategies. So I'm the chairperson of our former student team here on MTU, and one of the things that I've kind of struggled with over the last couple of months is like how to kind of delegate work effectively and just be kind of a good leader and put the team in a good position.
Yeah.
So would you have any kind of tips
Yeah,
in
I
that
mean,
kind of
Jack, honestly, well, it's really interesting you ask that question because, particularly in Formula One, we are packed full of engineers, but not many leaders, and actually quite a few engineers who get promoted. I'm sure you've heard of the Peter principle, where you get promoted to the point where you actually don't have the capability to do the job. You get promoted above your capability. The leadership challenge is a really significant one because, I mean, what is motor racing, whether it's Formula One or Formula Student? Basically, managing a project. It's a complex technical project. There's a beginning and an end. There are some boxes around that in terms of regulations, compliance, technology that you can use, budget. There's a whole bunch of things that you have to work within. But at the end of the day, it's about getting a group of people to go from where they are today to an end point. And from a leadership point of view, it's extremely important to articulate what that end point is. So there's the vision of where we're going to get to. And do we all agree that's a good vision? So if at the beginning there are people sitting around going, we don't believe in the vision, well, there's no point. They're never going to get there. So you have to get that buy-in right at the beginning. And by the way, if you're going to have an argument at the beginning. So let's argue about the vision and the strategy of how we're going to get there. But have the arguments up front. But once the arguments are out of the way, let's all get aligned behind what we're going to do here and have very clear roles and responsibilities so that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing, that people are given the opportunity to deliver. So if someone says they're going to do something, let them do it, or if someone's allocated a task, don't micromanage them, say, okay, so you've got that task to perform by next Friday or 2 weeks time or whatever. So the point is, as a leader, it's about creating a vision, a culture in which people are allowed to get on with the job. No one likes working with someone looking over their shoulder, or questioning everything they're doing. I mean, because the other thing is there's not only one way to do something, there's usually a number of different ways and everyone's different. So it's about creating an environment within which everyone has a clear role and responsibility. With that responsibility becomes clear accountability. So when my son Frank was at Oxford Brookes, they did a Formula Student program. And the thing that used to drive him mad was people sitting in meetings saying, I'm responsible for this and I want to do that and I'm this, I'm that. And they wouldn't do anything. There was nothing being delivered. And and everyone could see that. So this is where you have to have pretty thick skin and people have to be fronted up. And that's good because actually one of the things about building a team and leading a team on a project is you soon learn the things that will work. And it's not going to work if people don't deliver, and it's not going to work if people blame each other every time. It's always someone else's fault. So there has to be clear roles and responsibilities and accountability. And if people say they're going to do something, they're going to be measured by that. And that is exactly what it's like in Formula One. When you go into a race debrief on a Thursday or Friday or Saturday or Sunday afternoon or a technical meeting, you know that everyone around that table is going to be responsible for their area. And there's no point in you going into that meeting hoping that no one asks you the difficult question, because if there's a difficult question, it's going to be the first question you're asked. So stand up, be counted, deliver. If you say something, if you sit in a Saturday morning meeting at Red Bull and you say, we've done an upgrade on the gearbox software, or we've done XYZ or whatever, and this is going to happen today. And then by the end of the day, you know that the bit that you're responsible for has failed. You know the next time there's a technical meeting, which by the way is that evening, you know that you're first up. Literally, Christian Horner will be looking straight at you. So what the heck happened today? That's not blame. That's accountability. You have to deliver. So from a leadership point of view, get the vision, get the alignment, get the strategy agreed. What's the project plan? Who's doing what by when? And then everyone has to deliver against that, and not be afraid to be measured, because at the end of the day, it's all about outcomes and driving those outcomes.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Jack.
So
I've just terrified Jack about leadership now.
Kind of a bit, yeah.
We just have one more question for Mark, and if anybody has any questions that you thought of after, maybe Mark, I could message him on to you. Maybe you can give a quick answer to him, and I could send it
Yeah,
back to you.
sure. Yeah, no. If you pick up any questions afterwards, other than have you got any free tickets for Silverstone, I'm very happy to answer them.
I'll throw those ones in the bin. So, anybody else have any questions for Mark?
No, I think we might be done.
Could you sum up the feeling from a team point of view of I suppose that feeling of when you all come together as a collective and achieve that, say, podium at Jordan or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few of those moments. I mean, at Jordan Grand Prix, we started up, there were 33 of us, and people told us we were wasting our time. I mean, literally told us we were wasting our time. And 8 years later, we won our first Grand Prix. Now, it did take 8 years, but along the way, we achieved all the other milestones. So people very often will, I mean, I still sometimes get asked, how did you wait 8 years for that great day? Well, along the way, we had our first, 10th place, 9th place, 8th place, 7th place, 6th place. I mean, I remember the first double podium. In fact, I'll tell you a story. Whenever we finished 4th and 5th in the Canadian Grand Prix in 1991, we weren't on the podium, okay? 4th and 5th weren't on the podium. So what did we do? So we closed the garage doors and the mechanics built a podium. We built our own podium, and we got our own champagne, and we had our own celebration. And this is what I meant about the kind of Irish mentality. We were going to enjoy our moment in the sun. So the camaraderie that comes with that, sense of achievement, we are doing something together. We've all contributed to it. This is not, and one thing I can tell you, when you win in Formula One, or whether you just achieve a milestone, it could be scoring your first point, or both cars finishing the race. I remember at Jordan, one of our first targets was to get both cars to the end of a race. We finished, 15th and 17th. We still celebrated it because it meant our technology was reliable. So you set the milestones, you celebrate your successes, and and you drive a sense of, this is about everyone. It was never about Eddie Jordan. It was never about the drivers. I mean, the media thought that, the fans thought that, but inside the team, it was a collective. We're all in there together delivering. And it is so important to celebrate those moments when you achieve something, almost anything. Like when you built the car. I mean, I remember the first year when we built our first car and it went through all the regulatory checks and it passed first time. And we celebrated compliance. I mean, that's quite a boring thing to celebrate, but we were celebrating the fact that we were fully compliant, which meant we were ready to race. And to get through compliance, it meant that everybody in the factory had done their job in terms of design, manufacturing, quality control, assembly. Everyone had done everything. So there's a moment to celebrate. And it's really important to do that, because 99% of the time, it's just a pain in the ass trying to make the whole thing come together. Okay, it is hard work. James Allison, who's the technical director at Mercedes, famously said 99% of Formula One is, just hard work. It's, I'm trying to think of the word he used, but he gave a very famous interview and he said, it's just a nightmare. You know, and I laughed at it because I know what he means. I mean, most of the time it's just you're working so hard to make the thing happen. But then the 1%, when you succeed, makes it all worthwhile because you're part of something special. And by the way, you know, to all of you, I would say this: your heyday lies ahead, and it is so worth working towards that because you can have some life changing, life enriching experiences. And I would urge you all to follow whatever your dream in motorsport or engineering is, because there's nothing like getting there. And whether it's Formula One, aerospace, space, any form of engineering, I've worked with loads of people in different projects. The sense of satisfaction that comes out of creating something is it's immensely satisfying.
Thanks, Mark.
On another note, Mark has a book, The Business of Winning. So
Oh,
if anyone wants to know more about Mark, you can get that
yeah,
book online. So
yeah,
I'll
my
do a
book.
little plug
Yeah,
for you there.
Jesus, that's very good. I haven't got a copy here now. I don't.
I know I
But
have
yeah,
one at home anyway. I'll definitely
you,
give it a read.
you can. Yeah, there's that book, and it's a pretty light book. I mean, one has to say it's a bit of a ride through a number of topics that were close to my heart from spending my career in Formula One. But anyway, very good to have had this opportunity. Thanks so much, Ronan, for setting it up. If there are any follow-up questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
On behalf of the former student community, I really appreciate you coming out and everybody else that's joined the meeting as well. So
Yes, good.
really appreciate it. Thanks very much, Mark.
You good. That's all. Have a good evening.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks, Killian.
Thanks.